If you've been following the channel for a while, you know that we've covered a lot of ground. So with the holidays coming up, I thought this would be a good opportunity to pull together some moments from past videos to give you a taste of what we have on the channel and what videos you might have missed. We're going to revisit a few key conversations: neighborhoods that offer real value, school districts that families care about, affordability realities in today's market, and practical advice from industry experts. If you're new to the channel, this is a great place to start. And if you've been here before, think of this as like a kind of refresher, I guess, on the things that actually move the needle in Toronto real estate. One of the questions I get a lot is, where can you still find character, have good walkability, and find value in Toronto? So this is a clip from a much larger video that we're going to share with you, where I look at different neighborhoods, and this neighborhood in particular, Bloordale and Bloor Court, two neighborhoods that often get overlooked, but are really a great kind of interesting mix of like independent shops and good transit options and good walkability and a noticeable price difference between neighboring or nearby more expensive neighborhoods. The larger video is about the secret areas in Toronto that you might not know about, and this one is about one particular neighborhood in that larger video. And one thing I will say is, since making this video, and I'm not taking credit for this, I'm just saying that it's happening, more people are really wanting to be in these neighborhoods, and we're seeing a lot of offers happening on properties that come up in these pockets.
And I'll get to that in a second. But both of these areas I find a little bit similar in the sense they've got a very great kind of indie vibe, vintage shops. There's some like eco-friendly businesses. There's like a soap refiller place that is zero waste, for example. There's, very kind of diverse artistic kind of feel to it. Certainly Bloor Court has like access to some great parks. So for example, right here, there's Dovercourt Park. Right here is Dufferin Grove. Dufferin Grove has a really good farmer's market. So there's some great green space in Bloor Court. Bloordale, not as much green space as Bloor Court. Definitely some great stuff, some great access to amenities in those areas. And you're on the Bloor subway line, so you have really good access to transit as well, which is fantastic. Now, from a property value standpoint, Bloordale, which is on the west, is a little bit cheaper than Bloor Court, which is a little bit cheaper than Christie Pitts, for example. So your average price in Bloordale is around 1.47 million, so a little bit under 1.5. And then if you go just east to Bloor Court, it's about 1.58 million. So there's about a $100,000 difference. And then if you go kind of one stretch over to Christie Pitts, you're looking at 1.68. So there's a $100,000 kind of swing in freehold properties as you start at Christie Pitts and move your way west. No question that Bloordale is more accessible than this kind of surrounding areas, and to the tune of around $200,000 on average compared to a well-established area.
So for a lot of families, neighborhood choice begins and ends with schools, but it's not necessarily just about one school, but it's about continuity, elementary school into high school and etc. So in this clip, we're talking about the top 5 elementary schools in Toronto, specifically Maurice Cody. The important things people look for are walkability, community feel, and school progression from elementary through high school. They make a really big difference for people when they're looking at doing their long-term planning in terms of housing. If you're buying with kids in mind, or you're thinking ahead because you might need to, maybe down the road, this video will give you a good idea of some areas and schools to consider. The thing that I really like about if you were to move to that area is that, of course, the school is great. You'll have great neighbors. It's a tight-knit community and everything like that, but it's also very walkable. So that's one thing that might be lacking a little bit in some of like either Allenby or John Ross Robertson, depending on where you're living within those boundaries, is that you don't necessarily have amenities close by. If you're living in this area, you've got Mount Pleasant on one side, you've got Bayview on the other, you've got Eglinton to the north. You can actually see, here's the boundaries here. So there's Eglinton, there's Bayview, there's Mount Pleasant. So almost no matter where you're living in that rectangle, it's very, very walkable. There's lots of green space nearby. So, I'm a big fan of this neighborhood in general. Here's the other interesting thing to note as I'm kind of pointing out the shape of this, and I sort of did a poor job of drawing the rectangle, but you'll notice how almost kind of a perfect rectangle it is. There's a bit of an overlap, not a bit of an overlap, quite a bit of overlap between the high school that Maurice Cody feeds into. So if you're living in this district, your child is kind of guaranteed, for the most part, to go to Northern, which is the high school just up on Mount Pleasant, kind of near Yonge and Eglinton. It's also a very good school. If you buy in this neighborhood, your child is, for lack of a better word, guaranteed to have kind of continuation from one school to the next that is nearby. That's not necessarily the case. Like if you're living in Allenby or John Ross Robertson or somewhere else, depending on where you're living in those pockets, your kid might go to one high school or a different high school. This one, no matter what, you're going to Northern, and Northern is a good school. So this is an area where you could move to and you could stay for an extended period of time if you have an interest in having school be very accessible for your kid. And so that's something that So this next clip is from a conversation that I had with Matthew Doring. He's a contractor and renovator, does a lot of big jobs, extensions, gut jobs, all that kind of stuff. And we talked about different things that people should be looking for and be aware of when they're looking to buy older homes, especially ones that haven't been given a lot of love in the past, and you're thinking that you're going to buy it and maybe put some work into it. So check out the snippet. You'll learn some stuff about what contractors are looking for when they're walking through a home.
Something that I found really helpful is looking for pride of ownership. So that can be identified in many ways. First, approaching the house, the condition of the roof. Are the shingles peeling? Is the eaves trough? Are they connected? Once you enter the home, some really good identifiers can be, is the place clean? And you know, if there are people that respect their home, the big ticket items for the most part are taken care of. But some really telltale signs are water spotting on the ceiling. The basement, does it smell musty? Does it feel damp? Those can be some really good, easy ways to identify if a house has been maintained.
As far as the water spotting goes, that would be maybe indication like of a leak from the roof, or if it's the ceiling on the main floor, it could be like a leak from a bathroom, something like that. So then as far as like, I mentioned, how do you know if a home is like of quality or not, if it's going to be a disaster? The thing that I kind of warn my clients about is like, look, there could be things behind the walls that is very difficult to suspect, right? Very difficult to figure out. What, in your opinion, are some of the more expensive kind of like hidden things that people might encounter?
So I would say like the top three biggest things where we, run into are electrical. So if there's knob and tube wiring, and if it's running in just a small area, this can be a very inexpensive repair. If the entire house has knob and tube and needs to be cut open to replace it, this is more expensive. Another big one is, especially in a finished basement, if your foundation's leaking. So it would require waterproofing, either from the interior or exterior. It's a big one. That is a big one. And the last one I would say that's not so much a repair, but most clients, until it gets properly tested, is things like asbestos and vermiculite. That is something that can be an unknown when, looking or purchasing any home.
Okay. And just for everybody's records, vermiculite, what is that?
Vermiculite is an insulation that is toxic to humans.
You can identify it pretty specifically. It's kind of like clumpy, not your typical. Affordability is the backdrop to almost every real estate conversation right now, especially in Toronto, and there is a lot of noise out there. So in this short clip that's coming up, we break down what affordability actually looks like in Toronto, how interest rates factor in, and how income growth compares to housing prices. So if you're trying to make sense of headlines versus real world numbers, this is a clip in this larger video will give you a good idea of figuring out what's real and what's not.
That's pretty telling of what kind of state the condo market is in right now in the city. Okay, so let's talk about what kinds of people might be buying properties in Toronto and what their incomes might look and what it would actually get them. So the first thing I want to do, and please bear with my penmanship, it is poor and has gotten more poor as I've gotten older and have done more and more things digital. Yes, it looks like a child is writing things. But in the freehold market, if we look at any kind of freehold property, so detached, semi-detached, freehold townhouses, row houses, those kinds of things, we have an overall median price of 1.3 million. Okay. Now, the minimum down payment that you can use, so I'm going to put minimum down. The least that you can put down at that price point is $105,000. That will end up getting you a mortgage amount, total mortgage of around 1.24 million. Now you might be thinking, hey, wait a second. If I take 1.3 million and subtract 105,000, I do not get 1.24. I would end up at 1,195,000. That is because if you put less than 20% as a down payment, you have to pay something called CMHC insurance. It is insurance for the mortgage lender, so for the bank, not for you, for the bank that's giving you the mortgage that insures your mortgage, so that if something were to happen, to you with your employment, something like that, that the bank is safe, essentially. So you end up with a total mortgage amount of that, and the income that you need to support that amount is $262,000. So that's a lot. That could be a single person. They're obviously making great income. That is more likely two people who have roughly equal amounts. And again, it doesn't have to be, but if we think back to what I mentioned, I did not mention that the median income in 2023, I can't remember the numbers that I got from CMHC. It was 2023, maybe 2024, but the median income in Toronto, roughly right now, is $129,000. So 129,000 times 2 would get you $258,000. That's pretty darn close to the amount of income that would be needed to support a $1.24 million mortgage. So, that is probably two people making around the median income, just as an example, to support that. Now, what if, that's if you have the minimum down payment. What if you had 20%? So if 20%, then what happens is your minimum down payment changes to $260,000. A question as old as time is whether someone should buy or whether someone should rent. So in this clip, it's from a larger video where we talked about the differences between the two and the affordability of both. Does it make more sense to be a renter? Does it make more sense to be a buyer? Which costs more? And what are the pros and cons of both? So you're gonna wanna check this one out. $5,000. And your appreciation is going to bring you, again, I kept it at 2%. Your appreciation is going to get you just a little over 1.1 million. After your sale is about $1,050,000. Your total proceeds is going to be around $213,000. I think you could rent $1 million either condo or house, depending on the neighborhood and that kind of stuff, for around $4,000, give or take, right? Could be a little bit higher if it's a nicer house. Could be a little bit lower if it's a condo or something like that. Ballpark it, $4,000. The difference is $1,432. If you invest that at 5%, you would end up with $228,000 at the end of 5 years. And if you can get 8% returns over the course of that 5 years, you end up at $256,000. Again, renting wins. And we're talking about a difference of anywhere from, let's call it 16,000 up to, and it could be more obviously, but at 8%, you're looking at a difference of, 42,000, something like that. Let's take a look at the 1.5 million scenario. So again, I've got it all written out. When you're buying something for 2 million, and here's something that I didn't explain before, so I'll get to it in one moment, is the interest rate. Your payment is going to be $92.60 times 12 times 5. So that is $555,600. Now that total payment of $92.60, if you notice the interest rate, I did 4.1. I also did 4.1 for the $1.5 million purchase as well. The reason being is that you no longer require mortgage insurance. But because there's no mortgage insurance, banks aren't insured on your mortgage, and so they actually won't give you probably as good of a rate. So that's why I used 3.9 for 500,000 and $1 million, but use 4.1 for 1.5 and 2 because of the 20% down payment, as you can see there. So your land transfer tax is $73,000 on a $2 million property. Closing, I still think you can do for around $3,000. Again, just kind of closing costs and that kind of stuff, like lawyer fees, etc. Your down payment is $400,000. Your appreciation after 5 years is going to get you to just a little over 2.2 million. After selling fees, you're just a little bit under 2.1 million. Your net proceeds are going to be just a little bit under $702,000. Now, when you are renting, I think it would cost you for a $2 million place roughly around $7,500 a month. The difference between your rental payment. So that's just a bit of a highlight package from some of the videos that we put out in 2025. We're going into a new year, 2026. There's going to be new content. If you're looking at moving to Toronto or moving within Toronto, definitely will want to subscribe to the channel just to make sure that you check out all the content that I put out there that's going to help you make better educated decisions about your real estate needs.